In the previous section, we explored how wills are used for voluntary transfers of ownership after death. Now we turn to involuntary title transfer, which occurs when property ownership changes hands without the owner's consent. These transfers happen through operation of law, court action, government authority, or even natural forces. Understanding how and why involuntary alienation occurs is essential for real estate professionals to recognize title defects, ownership disputes, and property risks. Laws of descent. When a property owner dies without a valid will, intestate, ownership passes to the deceased's legal heirs through the laws of descent and distribution. This is called title by descent, and it is the method by which property is inherited rather than purchased. The state determines who the rightful heirs are and the share each receives. For example, if a person dies intestate leaving a spouse and 2 children, the estate is divided according to statutory law. If no heirs can be located, the property escheats to the state or county government. Abandonment. If real property has been abandoned for a statutory period, the state may claim ownership through escheat. Abandonment occurs when an owner leaves property vacant, unpaid, and unclaimed with no intention of returning. After the statutory time limit, the government assumes ownership to prevent the land from remaining unused or unmanaged. Foreclosure. A property may be involuntarily transferred through foreclosure when the owner fails to meet debt obligations or pay property taxes. Foreclosure allows line holders to recover what they are owed by forcing the sale of the property. Mortgage lenders, taxing authorities, or contractors with mechanics liens can initiate foreclosure proceedings. Once the property is sold, title passes to the new owner or lender, extinguishing the previous owner's rights. Eminent domain and condemnation. The government possesses the power of eminent domain, which allows it to take private property for public use as long as it provides just compensation to the owner. The process of exercising this power is called condemnation. For example, a city may condemn private homes to build a highway or public school. The transfer is involuntary even though the owner receives payment. Case study: Kelo versus City of New London, 2005. In the landmark case of Kelo versus City of New London, the city sought to seize private property through eminent domain for an economic development project that included a Pfizer plant. Suzette Kelo and her neighbors argued that the taking benefited a private company rather than the public. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in favor of the city, stating that economic development can be considered a public use under the Fifth Amendment. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor dissented, warning that the decision blurred the line between public and private use. The controversy prompted 43 states to strengthen their property rights laws to limit governmental takings for private development. Adverse possession. Another form of involuntary transfer is adverse possession, which allows someone who occupies land without the owner's permission to gain legal ownership after meeting specific conditions. The possessor must have a claim of right or color of title, maintain open and notorious possession, and occupy the property continuously for the statutory period. In Arizona, the period required is 10 years. In some states, the possessor must also pay property taxes. Title is not granted automatically. The possessor must file a quiet title action in court. Property owners can prevent loss by regularly inspecting their land, removing trespassers, and enforcing their rights before the statutory period expires. Estoppel. The doctrine of estoppel prevents a person from asserting rights that contradict prior actions or statements. In real estate, it can stop an owner from reclaiming property after making misleading representations. For example, if a grantor knowingly conveys property with a defect but later corrects it and tries to retake ownership, estoppel prevents the grantor from undoing the conveyance. The grantee remains the rightful owner. Escheat occurs when a property owner dies intestate and without heirs. the state assumes ownership to prevent land from becoming ownerless. Similarly, abandoned property can escheat to the state after a statutory period, ensuring land remains productive and taxable. Natural forces. Affecting title ownership may also change due to natural processes that alter the land's shape or boundaries. Erosion is the gradual wearing away of land by water or wind, resulting in the loss of property. Avulsion is the sudden loss of land due to floods, earthquakes, or other natural disasters. Accretion is the slow buildup of soil or sediment, known as alluvion, that increases land area. For instance, if a river gradually deposits sediment on a property's edge, the owner gains ownership of the new land through accretion. If a flood suddenly removes land, however, ownership of the lost portion typically remains unchanged. Summary: involuntary title transfer occurs through mechanisms such as descent, foreclosure, eminent domain, adverse possession, estoppel, escheat, and natural events. These legal processes ensure that property continues to have clear ownership, even when transfers happen without the owner's consent. Real estate professionals must understand these principles to protect clients, resolve ownership disputes, and verify title integrity. Discussion: why is eminent domain considered an involuntary transfer? Because the government forces the sale of private property for public use, even when the owner does not want to sell. How can a property owner prevent loss through adverse possession? By regularly inspecting their land, removing trespassers, and filing a quiet title action if necessary. Why was Kelo versus City of New London controversial? Because it expanded the definition of public use to include private economic development projects. What happens when someone dies without a will and without heirs? The property escheats to the state or county government. Closing remarks. Involuntary title transfers demonstrate how ownership rights can change even when an owner does not intend to give up property. Courts, creditors, governments, and natural forces all have the power to affect title. For real estate professionals, awareness of these processes ensures better client protection and smoother transactions.